Hey guys, Ayo here. This is a kind of a vlog, kind of a thingy, whatever, my bobber, what's going on with my mind. Mainly a little, like a little history lesson on the ins and outs and all the stuff of my recordings and all that jazz and everything. Just to let you know, like the intricacies and all this. Not to talk highly of myself and using fancy high dollar words, but just the intricacies of actually recording and all that jazz and stuff like that. But like, you know, just my setup, you know, like just to let you know why it's so bright here is because my window is right over there, and as you can tell, the camera is trying to render. And at first it was all bright, and now you can actually see outside my window, but the rest of my room is all black. That's how bright it is outside. And I turn back here, and then I slowly fade back into existence. But like, how is my face over here kind of shiny? Because I use a mirror. So yeah, without giving you the backstory on that whole mirror and all that crap. So anyway, just to give you a little history lesson on this date in history, which used to be called Tifatit, ITP, which was what I don't know the word, anagram or whatever, like some kind of weird fancy word for, you know, the shortening of a series of words to make it into a thing, kind of like how United States of America is shortened to USA, you know, like, you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, things I find interesting that happened today in the past, aka Tifatit ITP. You remember that if you've been a loyal watcher of my show. But anyway, without all that rambling, my old version of doing that show was actually the way I used to do it back way in the day when I had a news show every day. That was back in like 2006, 2009, all that stuff. But anyway, I know I keep rambling on and on. That's what I do best. I ramble because my mind is faster than my mouth, and everybody has that problem. But anyway, to get on to point, so I used to have the, like, whenever I actually talk about the articles and stuff pertaining to the history and stuff, I had the entire screen be the picture with my voice in the background, and that's how I did Tifatit ITP a while ago. And then I changed it to you know, not only the format but the actual name of the show to This Date in History, and then in which I have you know, the image pertaining to the article being the main thing on the screen, with a little image of myself. Actually, no. I changed it to like what you see here, with the image pertaining to the article either in the top left or the top right corner, and then like I flipped it around, you know, every time I changed the article and all that stuff. I was toying around with that idea, and then recently, as you may or may not have seen, I changed it to the entire thing, instead of what you're seeing here being the actual image pertaining to the article, with me being in the top right, you know, or the top left corner, and I don't switch it around like I did in the format before that, but I had it steady. I do that because, you know, like every person, I'm lazy. But on top of that, like, you know, with a rule of thumb with recording, for like I'm not gonna give out a set number, but if you're gonna be editing a video, the rule of thumb is the actual time it takes to edit is at least 2 to 3 times longer than the actual video. So like, let's say the raw video is between 10 to 15 minutes long, which is the normal raw video for this date in history. Well, that's just what it's called now. But like, you know, like it's between 10 to 15 minutes long. So in post-production, or editing in layman's terms, for 10 minutes, that's a half hour of editing time. For 15 minutes, that's 45 minutes of editing time. That's basic cutting. That's basic cutting and a little tweaking here and there. Now, for the intricacies that I'm doing with, like, you know, the image, you know, popping up here and then fading out with another image fading in there, all that stuff, that, you know, substantially increases editing time, because not only do you have to go in there with every image and then you know, fold over the thing for the fading in, fading out, go into you know, to the actual editing settings, put in the PIP or the picture-in-picture, and all that stuff. Now, the raw footage, or the raw video now, because we don't actually use footage anymore, but the raw video, if it's just even 10 minutes long, with the final product being cut in half to about 4 to 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes, maybe 7, depending on like how much dead air you put, how good you are at recording, like maximizing the amounts of content you put out versus just sitting there and letting your mind think or reading the script or all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So like, I have 10 minutes if you use if after all the cutting and all the stuff and just the basic stuff I do, out of 10 minutes, I'm just out of a 10-minute raw video for a 5-minute final product, just using rough numbers there. We're looking at about an hour of editing time. So just, the 5-minute video you see, the 7-minute video you see, between actual looking it up, researching on my phone, finding the pictures pertaining to the images, which we'll get into pictures here in a minute, recording and editing, all for a 5-minute video, we're looking at least 4 to 5 hours of work for 5 minutes of video. That is crazy, and a lot of people don't really understand and appreciate the art of editing. Not to talk highly about myself, I'm no artist, but it is a lot of work to put in for a very minute thing, But anyway, going into actual images, back when with the old format, with the images pertaining to the entire screen, when I was actually looking for images pertaining to the articles, sometimes the image is very small. Sometimes the image is, rectangular. Sometimes the image is oblong. Sometimes the image is oblong, rectangular like that. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's perfectly square. Like that. Sometimes the image actually, has no background. So it's just kind of cut out and it's kind of like floating there in the thing. So, I can make all of that except for the small images work, because if it was a small image, then I put it in the video editing program, it blows it up, then it's all pixelated and blurry and distorted and it doesn't look right. So sometimes just finding images takes a long time and a lot of work just to find images pertaining to the article. And being a not elitist, not a completionist, but being as thorough as I am, I can't just be today in 1866, blah, blah, battle, and then I just search for battle 1866 and grab the first image. No, I'm not sure if you actually noticed this or researched this or even thought about this, but I scrutinize and really, really dedicate time to finding images that are the right size, shape, good dimensions that would actually fit into the screen, or at least, when I was doing the little picture-in-picture thing with the little thing up here, or up here respectively. But anyway, just trying to find an image that would not get distorted, that would not become too small, that would not become too big, is damn near impossible, especially for finding images pertaining to events that predates anything older than things that came out in the 1800s, the Battle of whatever in 1066. A lot of times finding an image is I spend 10 minutes looking for an image sometimes, and I just give up and I grab the first thing I can think of that would mostly represent that actual article, because I can't scroll around through pages and pages of Google image search, just for one image. That's ridiculous. I'm going to spend days trying to find image for one article, and that ain't going to cut it. So, but on the other side of that coin, with this new format I'm trying, with instead of me sitting here with the image popping up here, then fading away and popping up here and fading away, and sometimes if it's just a circle image without a background, I put it over my face because I want to be weird and all that stuff. The problem with that is that sometimes now, instead of the image, having been too small, small images are actually good to pop up in here. But if the only thing I could find, is an oil painting or something, if it's an intense article the Kent State shooting and stuff, it's that the picture with the woman screaming and there's dead bodies on the ground and everything. You need to have the full image of that, just to portray what's is going on with that article. The problem is, you take the full image of that, you shrink it down into an area that covers like no more than my hand at most, then now it's too small. Now it's become pixelated, the exact opposite spectrum of a small image, trying to expand it into the whole area here, like I had with my initial format. So I've come up with a new idea, and I'm going to pass this to a couple friends and family and stuff. But now, instead of doing any of those other formats, I'm going to do a little bit of a new thing. So I'm going to see here. It's there we go. So I'm going to use my phone. I'm not going to use this camera anymore. I'm going to use my phone to record me in portrait. So instead of landscape that you see here, it's going to be in portrait. And the reason why I move my camera to this way now, as you'll see here in a minute, I'm going to have my, as I said, in portrait on this 1/3 of the screen. I don't know why I can't orchestrate my hands correctly. On this portion, or maybe this portion, depending. Personally, I like me being over here, so that way, stupid. I can't orchestrate my arms, so that way this entire section, this other 2/3, is all dedicated to the image. So even if the image is small, which I'm hopefully not going to try to get, I'm going to try to find images that are not small, but images, it can be here. If the image is rectangular, it can be here. Why can't I orchestrate my hands? If the images are long, it can be here. If the images are, square, it can be here. So, and the images are, without a background, it can be here. So that way, no matter what, other than the small image problem, which is an easy problem to remedy, this is the best thing I can think of right now. So if you have any thoughts, go ahead and tell me. If you prefer me on this end or on this end, tell me. If you have any other ideas about other formats, ulterior formats to remedy all this, because I want to make it as pleasing to the eyes and a good format for you, but on the other end, I don't want to spend 75 hours editing. I have shit to do. I have stuff to go, places to be. I can't spend my whole day editing. So YouTube. Yes, I love YouTube. I actually want to make a career out of YouTube and everything, but I can't spend my entire day editing. And even if I do get to the point where I can actually have volunteers and I actually get the money to pay people to edit and everything, I don't want to make them edit all day either. So I'm trying to find a good middle ground of formats versus editing, where it's easy on the eyes and it's easy on my editing time. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, whatever, it's all appreciated. Leave comments in the underbar. So yeah, that's all I really have to say. Until later. Toodles.